Pete Epkin with the RoboZone podcast. We are in week 3, competitive week 3 of Rapid React. With me tonight, I have some blue banner winners from some districts here in Michigan. So without further ado, and we're Johnless and Kimless this weekend, or I call them John Kim, Kim John. They know they're fully adapted to my humor. But we have first off Allison. Allison, tell us who you are.
My name is Allison Meisler. I'm the head coach and drive coach for 3538.
The Robo Jackets, which just won Rochester, FEM Rochester. Congratulations.
Thank you.
And Chris, please introduce yourself.
Yeah, hi, I'm Chris Purdy. I'm the head coach for the Davison House of Cards team 3534.
Recording in progress.
Chris, congratulations for winning Kettering Week 2.
Thanks.
Amazing win.
Thanks. Ton of fun.
A lot of good defense. We're going to get there.
Yeah.
So, we're now past week 2. We're getting a little more. I think the rust is coming off and the wheels are starting to get, going, and we're getting all oiled up for the rest of the season and kick off, ready to get for state championships here pretty soon. So, Allison, tell us about your experience at Rochester. We know you won it. Congratulations again. But tell us about your experience at Rochester with the Robo Jackets.
I guess I'll focus on what we learned field side because that's my role on the team at competition. But really, we did a lot of experimenting and learned about how the game plays and how our robot plays the game. Leading up into Rochester, I spent a lot of time thinking about how to do match planning and playbooks, and we talked about different ways to kind of do path planning between partners. And we've talked about 4 different styles of zoning: splitting the field vertically, splitting the field horizontally, splitting the field diagonally, everybody orbiting, and free for all. And it turns out so far that free for all is my favorite. So that's kind of an interesting development. I think there's a possibility that kind of shifts over the course of the season as robots become more equal in scoring, and it becomes more viable to do more of a zoning strategy. And then I don't know, I guess one of the things that we were surprised about is going in, we were concerned about being able to find cargo on the field. And it turns out that it actually wasn't too bad, because either we could see the cargo and it wasn't a problem, or we couldn't see the cargo and it was in one of 2 places. It was in the blind spot behind the hub or the blind spot right in front of our driver's station. So it was just really a lot of going out on the field every match and experimenting with different mechanics and gameplay that we wanted to be able to utilize in the future.
And Allison, for people that are out there watching or listening, tell us a little bit about the robot. I mean, tell us what the makeup of your robot is, because you're giving us some experience. But if we were to look up your robot, what would we see?
So we have an 8-wheel drive tank and a high goal shooter on a turret. And then we have a traversal climber. It's nothing too fancy. Set of static hooks instead of dynamic hooks, but it's fast. We tried to go slow once, and it turns out that's not the move. We just got to send it. We tried to go slow once, and it double bounced itself off and fell.
Oh.
Got right back up again. All good.
Which means your robustness is up there. That's good.
Yeah. This is the first year that we've fielded a turret ever. We experimented in the off season for infinite recharge. And we found that really speeds up our shot a lot. In our data collection and strategy, we keep track of whether teams are shooting from the fender, the tarmac, or other, as well as whether they're shooting from the same side as their driver's station or the opposite. And going back and looking at the data afterwards, we think that the turret was a contributor to being able to shoot effectively on the opposite side of the field, and we think that gave us a pretty significant advantage. So I'm looking forward to seeing what the kids that are working on the code for that can do with that over the course of the season, to continue to increase just the number of different ways we can use that.
So Allison, is your turret Limelight? Do you use a Limelight and you're using the targeting to do that?
Yes.
Okay, makes sense.
So,
I have a clear idea of what your robot's like. Chris, how was your experience at Kettering Week 2? I heard you guys did some pretty good defense.
Yeah, we had an awesome weekend. We just went out and just tried to play good, solid matches. We pride ourselves on being really reliable all the time. Qualifying was pretty smooth. We led for a lot of Friday, and then our pneumatics manifold came loose inside of the robot and shredded our wiring. So it took us 3 matches to get that put back together and replace the pneumatics module, things like that. Got a few 4RP matches. We qualified third. We got picked with the Whitmore Lake Trobots 3668 and Hybrid Hornets 5150 to be on the second alliance. I won't kid anybody to say we hadn't resigned ourselves that we would probably just be finalists, and we were hoping to maximize points for states up against 70 from Goodrich and 1684 Chimera and Gears of Fortune 5235. So we mixed up strategy. We switched to swerve drive this year, and we had a young lady who's now our permanent driver. So she's a competition rookie, but she got everything out of that swerve. We went out and played a magnificent defensive game. Really shut down Goodrich and Chimera and allowed Trobots to outscore them. And I think we felt really good that we pulled off an upset win. It was just a ton of fun. Just finding a way to do it.
When people talk about the swerve, I'll call it the swerve because they always talk about the swerve. They don't talk about it in a defensive capacity. About you don't have to go push people. It's bump and run, and we did that like you did at our first event, and we had a lot of success. And made the semis because of it. So it was amazing to know that you can actually do that, right? Having that maneuverability.
Yeah, the maneuverability was key. We knew Goodrich had mechanisms, and we ran mechanisms in 2020 for the first time, which was really our practice season for swerve. And we knew how we got pushed around, and we're really good at playing D. We know how. So the maneuverability of the swerve, being able to, spin around and be able to turn the other teams to make their shots miss was really incredible. We were checking the robot last night. She wore the treads right off of it. So really proud of her effort.
Yeah, we burnt 4 holes in the carpet of Kettering University. So.
Oh, no.
The treads are awesome.
Treads are awesome, but you do have to replace them after an event, and we won't go any further with that. But just to be fair, Chris, give us a kind of head to toe about the robot real fast so people can understand.
Yeah, we're swerve drive now. Really happy we stepped into that. We use the swerve drive specialty, the Mark IVs. All Falcon drivetrain, super low center of gravity. Everything's down in our belly pan. We have a shooter that's offset to the side, just a single wheel with limelight. We don't have a turret or anything. And then we have a windmill style climber with mechanical hooks that a lot of people commented at Kettering look like, professional earth moving equipment. It's just a big claw. But it's not the fastest thing in the world, but it was super steady, very smooth. We saw some teams that really rocked the hangar, bang off the glass. Our thing is so smooth. I'm really hoping that as the season advances, teams are going to be super comfortable climbing next to us.
Yeah.
So I hope that's one of our, key advantages going forward towards states.
I call your type of lifting off and traversing. I call that the gorilla movement, because it looks like 2 big gorilla arms just grabbing the next rung and pulling yourself to it. So
yeah, where we're I love the engineering part of the game, and where it's interesting is, there's so many windmill style climbers out there, including Goodrich and Rush, but it's amazing how different we can use the same concept, to get the job done. And others had kind of a dual hook. Ours is a single that's really balanced in the center. it's just an interesting, different way of doing it.
Yep, I
And
think that's going to be the
pneumatics.
cheesecake. That's the cheesecake climber for this year.
I don't know. I think it's harder than cheesecake. It's not something you can just throw on at the last minute. It's hard to do.
Yeah, remember 2019, the infamous year of the suction, getting onto that third hab, sucking on top of it and just lifting your robot off. And then you saw a bunch of that. Yeah. So I think you're going to see a lot more windmills like yours, but those teams have to have a lot of resources, have to have a lot of time, and maybe like a 1 in 6. They started 1 and now they're doing 6, or they're doing 5, or maybe even 4, because you got a couple weeks there.
Absolutely.
But not taking their eye off that target, because that second event will come up on you like that. So just speaking from personal experience.
And once you get it running, it takes a lot of practice to make sure it's working good. There's a lot of risk having your robot that high off the ground.
Yeah, our operator has been coming in at lunch to practice just about daily with ours, which has been really good for developing the muscle memory. We've intentionally practiced where he can't see the hooks, so he has to make the call just based on my thumbs up that the static hooks are good and being able to see the motion of the drive base. So I gave you a set of questions, but here's my first one, Allison. I'm going to ask you. That's not on there because you're a drive coach. Chris, are you a drive coach too? Yes. Yeah. And I'm a drive coach, right? So do you think the drive teams are more dependent on us as drive coaches to do what you just said, to know that the drive coach is like, good, you're good, and then the operator operate, that level of trust? Because you kind of just described it. Do you think it's important this year? So my drive team and I have actually had this discussion multiple times over the years about like when they think I'm useful. And it's really funny because I think that I am more useful to them early season when we are still developing our tactics and our playbooks and figuring out where our strengths lie. And they think that I am more useful to them at like state champs and world champs when the margins are getting razor thin. So from that perspective, this year doesn't really seem much different to me than usual. Like this is like we are in the usual state we are in at this time of the season, where we are developing our communication and what words we say to each other and how we signal each other and how we decide when to play which tactics and who's going to make the call when. Usually like I give the driver a command, but the driver can ignore my command if they think they have a better idea. And then if I think they're wrong, I let them know. That seems to be where we're at this year, just the usual development period.
What about you, Chris? What do you think?
Yeah, we're pretty similar. I was asking the drive team last night, do you guys actually hear me at all? The dynamics for this game, I think, were pretty good when we did a lot of low goal cycling just because of the higher percentage shot. So when our driver pulled up to shoot, the co-driver had already been looking for cargo in other places. So they switched roles. When the co-driver was shooting, the driver could take a peek around. And then, after the shots, we could say go, and the driver would take off after some more cargo. That seemed to work pretty effective. That gave me some time to, survey the field, see what was going on. As Allison mentioned, the cargo in front of the driver station is really hard to find, especially when it rolls into the hangar. So I was able to do a lot of that. And then I feel, especially for the end game early in the season, that my most important role is clock management. Trying to look at the score, look for the rank point. Can we squeeze in that last shot, or do we need to take off, to go climb? Trying to make sure that the drive team doesn't get stuck on the opposite side of the field. So, 30 seconds on your side is a lot different than 50 seconds on the opposite end of the field if you're down by the hangar. So, I think that's really where I fit in the most this year.
It's really hard to see the timers this year. This is the first year ever that I'm using the timer on the laptop, not the field timer.
Yep.
Yeah.
I was just going to bring that up, Allison, because we are at Calvin, and you're right. You couldn't see the timer, so people were looking up the big Jumbotron that was above us, because it's one of those college stadium deals.
Yeah, and
But there was
At
a delay.
Rochester,
There was a delay.
yeah. Well, and at Rochester,
Station
you
one.
couldn't see the audience display either, because if you were blue, it was behind you, and if it was red, if you were the Red Alliance, all of the useful information was like below where the hub and other driver stations were. So it was like an interesting change of pace for those first few matches, looking down at the driver station. I got used to it because we also we experimented with a bunch of different camera systems, driver feed cameras, and we settled on one that has a like crazy wide field of view. I don't remember the exact number, but it's a good chunk of the field. So I actually probably spend more time looking at the camera than the kids do.
One of my new parents this year is an engineer. Okay, not an engineer. I'm not. Don't claim it. I'm an IT guy. Love IT. The engineering I'll leave to someone else. But he made a good point. He said, as humans, we are hunters. That's where we came from. Our ancestry came from hunting, right? So we are more prone to looking on the field at things moving than you are a TV. Now, if you say teenagers, they have their phones in their hand 24/7. But I'm saying when you're behind the glass, I purposely watched the first couple matches with my team. I'm like, you guys aren't even watching the screen. They said, no, we need to see on the field. So
Yeah.
sometimes it's just native. You just have to do what comes natural to yourself. So I found
Yeah,
that very
my-
interesting.
My driver specifically says that looking down at the camera like breaks his immersion in like the robot and what it's doing. And so I don't think he ever looks down. I think that it's myself and the operator.
So like a Caddyshack reference, be the ball, it's be the robot, is what you're saying.
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah,
Oh.
same for us. We tried camera systems for a long time, and our drivers just never worked off the laptop that way. So it's really field centric for us.
Except Limelight, you want to know when you're actually targeting correctly, which is
Yeah.
nice to know.
Yep.
Right. So there is that. So Allison, how do you feel about the game? Is Rapid React something that when you saw the release video, which seems forever ago, but it was just in January, and now that you've played and won a Blue Banner, what do you think about the game?
This is gonna sound a little psychotic, but I usually like don't have opinions on games when they come out. I'm typically like very ambivalent because like it is what it is, and this is the game I'm going to be playing, and I have no choice in the matter, so I might as well just get to work. But that said, I do actually like this game. I think it's super fun to play, and it's really different. I have never played a game that's so dynamic before. Like going back to the conversation about the timer, anytime I take my eyes off the field, literally everything is in a different place. And I think that's super interesting. Like the robots are in a different place, the balls are in a different place, everything moves. And I really love that it's not predictable. There's not any predictable cycles, which I think is just a new and exciting challenge. I also think that it's interesting. One of the things that's kind of like been a discussion on our team is two offense, one defense versus 3 offense strategies. And I think it's kind of the mark of a good game that like there's not a clear way to play it, and that there's like discussion and back and forth on which one is going to be successful and win out. So I'm excited to keep playing this game until November.
And we will off-season events too. Chris,
Yeah.
what do you think about the game from where we saw it when it was released, and then analyzing it, strategizing it, and now playing it? What do you think about Rapid React?
Yeah, I share many of the same thoughts as Allison. Yeah, we just kind of started approaching it as an engineering game. It did look pretty cool and interesting right off the bat. It reminds me a lot of 2014. There's less game pieces involved. It's a pretty much almost a 2-dimensional game. There's the shooting and the climbing. But I'm with Allison. I love that there's so many gameplay styles. Like we went out in finals, and the way we were able to win was playing 2 defensive bots and only 1 offensive. And a lot of
Which I
years
hadn't considered.
that flat out won't work, right? Because there's no way one robot could outscore the other team. But that's exactly how 2014 was. If you remember the first couple of weeks, we were trying to pass the ball from robot to robot. And then by week 3, we were passing to the human player, then to the next robot. And then by the time we got to states, it was a really defensive game. It was almost too abusive, in that mode. So I'm not always a fan of defense. I would never tell a rookie bot to just build a defensive bot. But I think if you can play the game well and you have a robot that drives great, I think this is going to go down as a great game that has so much dynamics to the gameplay. I can even see, Allison made the point about zones, and we were trying to play zone, but I noticed some matches, all the balls ended up in one corner. And I can see later in the season where, just depending on where the cargo goes, you may switch up to defense, or change the dynamics.
That's kind of something. So like one of the things in 2014 that made teams really effective was that while they weren't playing offense, they could switch to effectively playing defense. And at least like from the matches that I watched this weekend, everybody was kind of in one or the other. There wasn't a lot of teams that were just dynamically going back and forth within the same match. And so that's a meta that I'm kind of interested to see evolve. And then the opportunities to play defense, not directly on your opponents, but play defense via starvation of game objects is something that's unique to this game, and I think is a really cool element that will evolve in an interesting capacity. Because when you have robots that are built to score, right, which is great, but it makes more sense just from a tactical perspective to have them play defense in a match. They can still use the mechanisms that were intended for scoring very effectively to play a starvation game. So I think that's really cool. I'm excited to see where that goes.
Yep.
Every time I hear a starvation comment, I think of Clinton Bollinger, because that's when he always loves to do that stuff. How can I starve the other team from scoring?
2017 and those pegs.
It's true. It's true. And I always channel my inner Clinton with that when that comes up, at least for defensive. And I think as the season goes on, you will see more and more and more defense. Probably a lot of it at state. So hopefully everyone's robots are pretty robust, or you know how to fix them real fast.
Or both.
Or both. So the next question, Allison, I have for you is, what lessons have you learned that you guys are going to use going forward? Now, there are all kinds of people listen to this, right, or watch it. Some are rookies, some are, 5-year teams like mine, and some are, 20-year teams. I know Kyle Hughes is a huge fan of RoboZone. I've had her on here, and we joke back and forth. So what lessons learned have you learned coming from Rochester and moving into your next event?
So I think like a thing that kind of hit home for us, and that is probably just generally applicable, is that I think it's important to be dynamic and flexible. And I don't necessarily mean that like your robot has to have every function available to it, but if you are a local fender scoring robot, be able to score from all 4 fenders, right? Like get comfortable being on the opposite side of the field, or the same goes for a high goal fender scoring robot. If you have a tarmac shot, maybe it's worth getting comfortable with doing a wall shot as well. But like we want to maintain simplicity of the robot and not like increase the mechanical complexity, but we want to be able to be as dynamic and have as many options as possible, and then know the appropriate time to use them is the second part of that. And then I think probably the biggest mechanical side change for us comes in the form of handling bouncing game objects and handling balls of varying colors that are all in a pile. And those are the 2 things that we think were slowing us down the most. So that's what we're addressing moving forward.
How about you, Chris? What lessons has the House of Cards learned for your second event?
Well, I think the most important thing for us is we designed our bot to be a high shooter, but it turned out low goal cycling is really good. Our percentage was, double in low goal essentially. So we can really see that you're your gameplay is going to have to evolve during the weekend, not just over, until states, because you have to size up your alliance. If your alliance is capable, you're going to have to go low goal and try to get that ranking point. But if you do happen to get on an alliance in qualification that can really shoot, then I think, for us, we need to show our high goal capability when you're with a team that can get to the 20 as high goal shooters. But other times, you're just going to have to buckle down, not show off what your robot's fully capable of, and just low cycle, to get that rank point. But that also showed us that our shooter's not great right now. We have way too much backspin. And when we did get our limelight, to hit it effectively, we had way too many bounce outs. So, we've already been back in the lab seeing how we can add a second set of rollers to the top of ours to not kill all the backspin, but, try to get a lot of it out of that. Some of the teams like Metal Muscle, they really had sort of a knuckleball shot that had very little spin, and the ball really settled in the high hub nicely. So I think that's the number one area we're working right now. A second area is our even our low hub shots at the fender. We have a gravity feed, and it's taking just precious seconds too long for the ball to settle into the launcher space. So we're trying to put an active mechanism on there. And then after that, we're just focusing on fine-tuning our autonomous routines. We finally got our single ball dialed in. I think we hit our last 6 or 8 of them perfectly. Our 2 ball was sort of hit or miss. So we're going to keep trying to evolve that as we work through the next few weeks before Troy.
So I listened to both what both of you said, and something just rang pretty clearly for me is the scouting teams at these events going forward are going to have to be spot on when they're watching these matches and watching the behavior of the robot and the behavior of the drive team to make sure that they're accounting for everything that the robots can do and that the drive teams can do, right? Because I think out of any season, at least that I've been part of, that defense is going to be the biggest point this year. Do you agree with that, Allison?
Yes. I think the thing that's going to make, and I guess I don't know if it's that much different than any other game, but the thing that's going to make the state championship or world championship winning pick is going to be the subjective metrics, which is horrifying and scary, because we can't process that as well as we can process the quantitative stuff.
Right.
But the strat kids, they've spent last week and they'll spend Celine getting their quantitative processes down and being able to interpret that data. And then they are super important as far as learning how to read the game and read robots and recognize maneuvers and tactics that are valuable in gameplay. So
it makes amazing highlight reels, right? Because robots are doing everything. Chris, we designed our robot week one primarily, and then we built stuff onto it for week 4, right? Low goal was our deal. We said low goal. We watched week 0 events. No one was going low goal. Everyone wants to shoot high goal. But every ball that we shot out of that robot, well, not shot, we call it deliver because it's in the low. You're not really shooting it. Went right into the low goal. So you could cycle. But we noticed in, at least for picking, when the alliance selection came around, people were still trying to change that. They didn't care about low because it's one less point, right? It's all about high goal, right? So I think something to lead to that teams need to, you can be really good at one thing, and that's great. But at the same time, when someone says that, I want to be the jack of all trades too, because I don't want to not get picked, right? So
yeah, I think I obviously can't put words in Team 70's mouth, but we had an excellent, super reliable climber, traverse climber. So, you think about those 15 points, and I know our high goal shooting wasn't that great, but what we saw at Kettering week 1 was that when we got to eliminations, it was the high goal shooters that were, that won the tournament basically. So I think, it's my assumption that that probably played into why maybe we didn't get picked and they took another team that was a better high goal shooter. Um, you know, but then we had to go the opposite way, and that's why we decided to play a very defensive game. So, but I think that's exactly the perfect dynamic for this game. Where our team, I think, is going to have to do a little better in terms of scouting is we've never been that effective at using our scouting during qual matches. We've always had, decent numbers to look at for eliminations, especially when it came to the third pick, because as Allison said, that subjective, if you're going to pick a team that plays defense, they have to be mistake free. They have to be able to take instruction and know what their role is in the game. So I think by the time we get to week 4 or 5, we're going to have to start using the scouting data even in regular matches more heavily, especially Saturday morning.
And that's going to be very tricky. Now, Allison, I came from 70, right? My daughter was on 70, so I feel a little hurt that Chris won, but yeah, I'm glad a good team won. Kind of. I'm not on 70 anymore, but they're brethren. But I remember when I was on 70 and I was in their scouting group, is that we would write pre-match scouting, and we would have just a simple piece of paper that would say these are the teams and these are what they do, and they just circle things like high goal, low goal, look for this. And I think that's something, Chris, that you guys could use very quickly, right? It's just a little piece, like a notepad that you run up and down.
And I certainly have to thank you for the help that you gave to our team, because before we started working with you, we were horrible at scouting. So, you guys made a big difference, and that's also one of the the awesome things about First is everybody being able to share like that. And to your other sentiment too, we didn't really enjoy going out and having to play a huge defensive game on 70 and 1684. I consider those teams to be some of our best friends in the robot space. They've helped us. We've played so much in tournaments together over the last 12 years. But that's what's awesome about First Robotics is at the end I walked over in the pits and we shook hands. No robots were harmed. So, and if they were, we'd be the first ones in there helping them, with repairs and everything. So I hope everybody takes that message for the rest of the season, that if you do go play D, don't play it to be violent. Turn robots, try to make them miss shots, try to slow them down. This isn't BattleBots. You can play defense at a very high level and not have it be violent. It needs to be, gracious professionalism at all times. And, I hope everybody remembers that.
What would Woody do?
You know what I'm saying? There's a right way to do it, and there's a aggressive way to do it. And I hope we did it the right way.
I think you did it the right way. And I have to say, what would Woody do every episode, because I miss the guy. What would Woody do?
Absolutely. Yeah.
And that's how you do it. You play clean, and then you go shake hands, and that's why we have better sportsmanship in our sport, because this is a sport to me than any other sport that I've ever been a part of.
Absolutely.
So the last question I have for each of you guys, and we'll start with you, Allison, is how do you think the transformation of the game is going to be from week to week, right? Week 1 is we had no idea. Week 2, if you're a traversal climber, you got a really good spot. You're going to get picked for even playoffs if you have traversal, because that's 15 points, right? But now, do you think that with week 3 and 4 and 5 and 6 and all the way to the state championship, once we get there, is you're going to have to do more than traverse? I mean, what do you see the game changing?
So I actually see it changing. One of the things that happened in 2019 is early season, we were almost always the robot that was climbing up to Hab 3. And by late season, it was pretty rare that we'd be doing that. I'd have to go back and look at data, but less than half of our matches, pretty much anytime we had a partner that had shown that like they were reliable in the previous matches, they would do Hab 3 while we kept scoring. And I kind of see this game going somewhere similar, where as more teams stabilize their climbers, that the fastest scorers on the alliance may choose to not climb and continue scoring throughout the end of the match, or maybe just come in hot and get like the middle bar instead of going all the way up to the top. And then I think that as the season evolves, the tiebreaker, that first tiebreaker being average score, will be interesting. In the most of the recent years, there's been a particular like scoring element that's been valued in that way. In 2019, it was the cargo, and 2020 was what, autos? I don't remember. I didn't play that game nearly as much, but that it's just like straight up number of points, I think will like be interesting to see how teams play that going forward. But I think that will matter.
What do you think, Chris? Where are we going to go from week 2 to 3 to 4 to 5 all the way to state champs?
Yeah, I think we're going to see the same thing, that you're on your alliance, you're going to have to figure out how to maximize the points, both pro and con, right? You've got to score as many as you can or prevent the other team from scoring. And it's going to be really hard to find that balance, but Allison said it perfectly. Those teams that have the reliable climbers like us, we're probably going to go climb, but we're going to need a partner that can score till the last second, and really keep pushing that envelope. And I think as drive coaches, especially when we get to states, we're going to have to be able to look at that score and make that assessment, probably with 30 seconds to go. Who climbs and how close are we? Can we outscore them in those last 30 seconds? And I think a lot of games are going to come down to just, 1 or 2 extra balls before that, before the last spot gets in the hanger. It's going to be really exciting.
I can't wait. I love this game. This is one of my favorite. Stronghold was pretty much my favorite, but yeah, I cited that because there's so many you had to traverse other things in that game. Yeah. So it was a lot of fun.
2016 was great. And 2014 was really good too. I also see this game being a lot like 2018. Remember, by the time we got to states, the teams that won, the matches were over in Auton by states, right? Whoever got control of the switches and what was the center called?
The scale. I called it the scale.
The scale, yeah.
That was the scale.
When somebody won the scale in Auton at states, I mean, the match was almost over in the first 30 seconds by the time we got there. And I really don't see this game going that far. I just think the level of gameplay is going to be the highest we've ever seen. So the matches are going to be super close.
That means everything's fair, and everyone likes it when it's fair. No one likes runaways. So
yeah.
At least I don't. So Allison, tell us again as you sign out who you are, what team you're from, and how we can. Well, first of all, let me thank you guys and congratulate both of you guys and your teams for winning again at your events, district events over the weekend. But as you sign out, please tell us who you are, what team you're with, and how we can follow your team. And we're going to start with you, Allison.
My name is Allison Meisler. I'm head coach and drive coach of FRC 3538, the RoboJackets. And honestly, if you want to know anything about us or have any questions, probably just message us on Facebook. We don't have a whole lot of media out there, but I promise we're pretty talkative people.
And I enjoyed talking to you today, Allison. This is the first time you and me met, so I very much enjoyed it. Thank you very much. And Chris.
Yeah, again, I'm Chris Purdy, the head coach of Team 3534, the Davison House of Cards. We're the same thing. Most of our social media presence is on Facebook at Davison House of Cards. So, reach out to us there. Check out the cool pictures. Really enjoy talking to everybody at the events. We love to share what we've done, sharing with other teams, helping out as much as we can. So, it was great talking to both of you.
And good luck to your guys' teams in your second event. Allison, where are you guys going to be for your second event?
Saline.
Okay. And Chris?
We're going to Troy. It's going to be
have fun in Troy.
Really hard event. I hear it's being televised, right?
That's what I heard. So it's
a lot. lot of great teams that are going to be there, but we're looking forward to playing with the best of the best.
Maybe Troy's the mini states this year, because usually Milford is. But let's see where the competition goes, and we'll make judgment after that. But like I said, congratulations to you guys, and good luck in your next events. And we will see you sometime later this season.
Thanks. Good luck to your team too.
Thank you.